Another sort of topic in the news this week was a BYU professor who was talking about some old Mormon doctrines about race that should long since have been repudiated and have not been. And that's salutary for the church to be forced to look in those corners of its history and to think seriously about the way that it treats women and all of those other questions.
There was a change, and the church flip-flopped on the question, right? Because the culture changed.
Turned on a dime. Let me say something about, there's always, from the very beginning, there's been this tension between authoritative revelation, sort of the right of the president of the church to receive guidance for the whole church, and this very strong tradition of personal revelation and the idea that all people have the right to have access to inspiration from God. And those two things compete at various times. And from the 60s on, there's been emphasis on the authoritative aspect and on following leaders and, not questioning, not asking too many questions, not wanting things to change. And that probably came to a head in the late 80s, early 90s, where a whole bunch of Mormon intellectuals were excommunicated. And, but since then, there's been this, gradual opening. It's not always comfortable to be an ambitious woman if you're a Mormon.
Is that changing? You were talking about things that were...
It is changing, slowly. And there's a backlash, I think. It's 2 steps forward and 1.5 back. It's simply true that hardly any women have the luxury of staying home and having, 6 or 7 or 10 kids and taking care of them at home. And the church will adjust to that reality.
Right now, everyone's talking about how women, and especially independent women, are swinging toward the Democrats, in part because the Democrats seem to have successfully framed the contraception issue as more about a woman's access to contraception than a question of the church's religious liberty. But were Romney to be the nominee and running against Obama, and given the importance of the female vote, I just wonder if the Obama campaign would be tempted to hint broadly at certain, trends within the Mormon church that have not been sympathetic to the idea of gender equality. Whether Romney would be vulnerable on those grounds.
I kind of hope so. I worry that when Mormons are talking about religious liberty, they seem to be talking about, they're talking about something different, right? I mean, they're not talking about birth control. They're talking about gay marriage. And Mormon sexism is the soft kind. It's chivalrous and sort of go up there on your pedestal and smile, please, and don't talk too loudly. It's that kind. Hinckley came up in the public affairs department of the church and had a really great sense of the optics of things, and I think he might have seen coming what happened, and I don't think that President Monson has that same sensibility. And I think they were genuinely shocked at the backlash, and I think that it will never happen. Nothing like Proposition 8 will ever happen again because of that backlash. They learned, I hope. They learned, I hope.
Isn't there